All right, we are going to talk about sex-linked genetics today. So one of the questions we're going to try to answer today, a male with one gene for colorblindness is colorblind, and a female with one gene for colorblindness is not colorblind. Why is that? Or a male with one gene for hemophilia, which is a disease that affects your blood, has this disease, but a female with one gene does not. And the question is why? The answer is these disorders are caused by mutations on the X chromosome. You'll notice females have two X chromosomes. Males have one X and they have a Y. So if you look at a karyotype of all of the chromosomes, male X and Y, female X and X, these are part of their 46 chromosomes. So sex chromosomes, X and Y chromosomes, male XY, female XX. If you notice, the X chromosome is a lot bigger than the Y chromosome. The Y is pretty short. So most sex-linked traits, ones that are on these sex chromosomes, end up being on the X because there's just more room. There's more DNA here for there to be mistakes. So this image shows all the disorders caused by mutations on the X chromosome, and there's a lot. And then mutations caused by, or mutations on the Y chromosome and diseases associated with them, which not very many. So in our little notes chart, we are going to write that the genes are on the X chromosome because for our purpose, we aren't going to talk about any of them on the Y here. We're only going to talk about the ones on the X because there's just so many more and they're so much more common than the ones on the Y chromosome. So with sex-linked traits, normal is always going to be dominant. So whatever the normal version of that gene or that trait is going to be dominant. A lot of these cause disease. The disease is going to be recessive. It is going to, in many of these cases. So we're just going to write dominant is normal, recessive is the disease. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Yes, okay. But the ones we're going to talk about, the most common ones, are recessive. The disease is recessive. So because these traits are on the X chromosome, we write the gene letters next to the X. And notice, in order to be a female, you've got to have two X's. So there's actually 3 different combinations we can have. We can have big B is normal, big B still has a capital B, so normal, or little b, in which place they would be colorblind or have whatever else disease we're talking about. For males, they have an X and a Y, so they only get one letter because remember, these genes are on the X chromosome. So if they just get a capital B, they're going to be normal, but if they get that one lowercase b, they don't have another b to mask it because they only have one X, so they're going to end up being colorblind. So we have a whole bunch of different notations here. A lot of times, you'll notice on this previous example, I had a B. You can use whatever the heck letter you want. A lot of times I encourage students to use an N. Why? Because capital N stands for normal, okay? And the only way they have the disease is if they have 2 lowercase n's, but you can use whatever you want. So here we have 2 X's, but they have a capital letter, so they're going to be normal. Here we have 2 lowercase letters, so they're diseased. Here we have a male with an X and a Y, so they have 1 uppercase letter, so they're normal. And here, X with a little n and Y, they have the disease. Now, one word that I want to point out to you, this person here is called a carrier. We use this with sex-linked traits. We also can use it for other regular dominant traits. Particularly, we use it for diseases and recessive diseases. So when somebody is normal, but they carry a disease-causing gene, we call them a carrier. So back on our definition page, so back one page, we have a bullet point that says carrier. We're going to write a definition here. A carrier is a person who carries a mutated gene but does not have the disease. So if it was regular, dominant, and recessive, they would just be big A, little a, because they carry this little a, which is disease-causing, but they don't have that disease. Or in the case of sex-linked, we can only call a female a carrier because remember, males have an X and a Y. They don't get 2 letters because they have a Y, and the Y does not get a letter. So in this picture down here, we've got two parents. They are both carriers because they carry a little r. When they have kids, they can have a regular normal kid. They can also have two other normal kids, but these are carriers because they have a lowercase r. And then they can have somebody who actually does have the disease. So examples of sex-linked traits. I'll show you where we'll write these in a second. But red-green color blindness. This is probably one of the most common. They can't distinguish between red and green. So this is what it would look like if they go to the grocery store. What is causing this? Well, there's genes that determine the rods and the cones, which pick up the color in your eyes. So if you have a mutation, these rods and cones that pick up either the red color or the green color, these don't work correctly. So you can't pick up the red or the green color in things you see. So we're just going to put these here on our chart. Okay, it's not perfect, but we're just going to put the examples over here just so we have them. These are going to be the 4 common examples that we are going to talk about. If you find a different place you can put them, you could put them in this spot as well if you've got space there. Hemophilia, this is a blood clotting disorder. Whenever you get a cut or a scrape, eventually you stop bleeding. People with hemophilia don't stop bleeding because they're missing something that allows them to form a scab. What's happening? Well, if they have a mutation in their DNA, they're ending up missing that protein. That protein is not the right size and shape, and it doesn't work properly to make that scab. So people with this disorder end up having to take medicine that gives them that correct protein. So we got hemophilia, we can add that to our list. Muscular dystrophy. This causes weakness and loss of muscle mass, and it gets worse as you get older, okay? There's many different types, but the one we're going to talk about is just generic recessive one. And really, the reason that this happens is because there's a protein in your muscles called dystrophin. And when you've got a mutation in the gene that produces this protein, you don't make that protein correctly. So your muscles don't end up being strong and they don't work properly. So muscular dystrophy we can add to our list. And then male pattern baldness. So you've probably seen somebody who has this balding pattern. It's pretty common. And again, it's way more common in males than females for the very reason that males only have one X chromosome. So if they get one copy of the gene, they automatically have that disease. So what's happening here is pretty complicated, but it has to do with testosterone and how your body processes testosterone. And there's a mutation in the gene that eventually affects your testosterone, which then causes your hair to bald faster. So we're going to turn to our sample problems. Our example problem, a couple pages back in our note packet. So a normal man and a woman with hemophilia plan on having a baby. In step 1 for all of these, dominant is always normal, okay? Recessive is always whatever disease it is. Notice they didn't tell us here it was sex-linked. So if you ever see hemophilia, muscular dystrophy, color blindness, any of those, you're going to have to know it's automatically sex-linked. Step 2, assign letters. Normal, we're going to use a big N, hemophilia, little n. Again, you can use whatever the heck letter you want, okay? So we have to figure out what's dad's genes. So dad is normal. Dad has an X and a Y. So he's got to be one of these two. And if he's normal, he's going to have a capital N. Mom has hemophilia. Mom is XX. Okay, we know mom is XX because all females are XX. Generally, there are exceptions to the rules, but most of the time. And she has hemophilia. So she's going to have 2 little n's. So we're going to write down mom is X with a little n, X with a little n. Dad is X with a big N, Y. Again, sperm and egg, same situation. And the reason we write these as little tiny letters is because they belong on the X chromosome. We're going to do our Punnett square the same way. Remember, these little letters always go with your X. And we're going to fill it in. Notice in these Punnett squares, we're always going to have 2 that have XX. Those are females, and 2 that have XY. Those are males. Okay? Now, normal offspring, out of all of them, how many will be normal? Remember, they have to have at least one capital letter to be normal. I see that these two have a capital letter, so they're going to be normal. So I'm going to write 2 out of 4. These two do not have a capital letter, so they are going to have hemophilia. A lot of times we'll ask you, though, instead of out of the whole Punnett square, we'll ask, what's the chance of a girl being normal? So when we look at just the girl, we're looking at just these two that are XX. We notice that both of them have a capital N, so both of them are going to be normal. Hemophilia girl, we don't have any. They would have to have 2 little n's. A normal boy has to have a capital N. Do we have any here? We do not. And then a hemophilia boy would have no uppercase n's, only lowercase, so we see 2 there. So just pay attention. If it says boy or girl, you're going to be doing it out of 2. And if it says out of all of them total, then you'll do it out of 4.